Hello, I'm Matthew Gavidia. Today in the MGH Life Sciences Medical World News, the Center for Biosimilars is pleased to welcome Cheryl Larson, President and CEO of the Midwest Business Group on Health. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. I am, as you said, the president and CEO of the Midwest Business Group on Health. We're one of the oldest and largest employer coalitions in the country. We're a 501c3, so we focus on education and employer-directed research projects. We represent members like Boeing, Caterpillar, Walgreens, State of Illinois, City of Chicago. We represent 11 states in the Midwest. And most of what we have focused on in the last 10 years has been addressing waste and misuse and low value, no value care in the healthcare system, as well as the whole area of specialty drugs and biologics, biosimilars, and better cost management of those areas.
So to get us started off, why has saving money on biologics become so more important than, say, 10 years ago?
Well, I think up until then, employers weren't seeing as many biologics in the marketplace as we see today. And for some disease states, the number of therapeutic options has grown significantly, but the costs have grown as well. And this is important to employers because in the end, they're really the real payers of healthcare, not the health plans or the PBMs. It's public and private employers like we represent and the government. And we have fiduciary responsibility to our plan beneficiaries to offer the best benefits at the best price. And you know, from the Department of Labor, the DOL, if you look at fiduciary responsibility, it says a bunch of stuff, but in the end, it says pay only reasonable expenses. And the marketplace, in many ways, has not been reasonable. And biologics have contributed to that. And biologics and specialty drugs, we know, have the ability to change the face of treating diseases. And there are an increasing number of them being produced for rare and chronic conditions or previously untreated conditions. For the past 10 years or so, our members have cited managing specialty drugs as their top priority for over 5 or 6 years of that. Otherwise, it was in the top 2 or 3. So it continues to be very, very important to them. And employers recognize it's not just about saving money on biologics, it's about getting the right drug to the right patient at the right time for the right price. And that's where partners and stakeholders come in. And if they're adding to the cost of biologics and specialty drugs, if they're preventing biosimilars, which we're going to talk about in a minute, from getting to the market and being more utilized, we've got to address those issues. And so our focus has been on helping them manage that waste and that misuse and low value, no value care in the system, because it does have a direct impact on the cost of the drug. And we tell pharma all the time, you know, we can't impact what you charge for a drug. We don't have to buy it though. But we also want innovation in what drugs they're bringing to the marketplace. And so it's a double-edged sword. And so most employers, at least all of mine, are offering all of the specialty drugs that are out there that have proven to be innovative, game-changing, efficacious, and getting rid of the low, no-value drugs because they've got to figure out a way to afford these. Our issues today are that intermediaries like PBMs and others are adding significantly to the cost of the drugs, and it's everything from retaining the rebate, which many employers love rebates because they think that they're saving money or making money, but in reality, it's fake money. I call it fake money because it's like a tax return. And it looks good to the CFO initially, but you're paying for it up front. And PBMs are often keeping the spread, keeping all of the drug distribution in-house, locking out new drugs, clawing back co-pays. We wrote a report on this a couple of years ago. It's really opened a lot of employers' eyes. Our members tend to be pretty sophisticated and understand the challenges, but the average employer out there that may not be part of a coalition, you know, what are they doing? Who are they talking to? Who can they trust? This has continued to be a problem. I don't think legislation, anything is happening soon, and it may be the only thing, rebate legislation, that you know, gets us where we need to go. But giving the rebate back to the patient at that point of care is probably not the solution. So employers and other key stakeholders really need to share our thoughts on this to get it right this time.
Today, roughly 90% of traditional drugs prescribed are generics. Where are we with biosimilars, and what does this signify to you?
Well, it took a long time to get employers to embrace generics. And then they started using them, and then most plan designs became generics first. But even though adoption was slow, once generic competition gained momentum, costs went down, and today we're at 90%, as you said. There was a RAND study, a quote recently that said the use of biosimilars in the US could lead to a reduction of $54 billion in direct spending on biologic drugs between now and 2026. And that's not very far away from right now. And we recently launched an employer report on biosimilars. We actually quoted your organization where you state that pricing competition between biosimilars and biologics may actually lower prices overall or force out competition as a result. And we're hoping for that. We want employers to be knowledgeable to know when it's appropriate to use a biologic because there's no alternative, and a biosimilar that is just as efficacious, that's been FDA approved. If they're not interchangeable yet, we still can't figure out why the FDA has dragged their feet on that. But the doctors will base oftentimes what drug they prescribe on that factor. Education is key to all of this, to all of the key stakeholders. And employers still, even though when biosimilars first came out a number of years ago, and it took forever for more than just 4 of them to be out there. I think we're at 20. Number might be higher than that, I don't know. But, you know, we need to educate them about clinical efficacy, that they're as safe as effective, as I said, for the improved indications. We do, though, talk about the desire or the recommendation that, at least for the time being, don't take a current patient off of a drug, a biologic, if they're working on it. Because sometimes with RA or MS, they've gone through 4, 5, 6 drugs, and they finally found one that they don't have any adverse reaction to. Keep those people on those drugs for now, unless a switch needs to be made. Focus on biosimilars with your new patients.
A lot has been said about the savings being left on the table because of failure to adopt biosimilars. Do employers have a viable role in helping biosimilars become assimilated into healthcare?
They absolutely do, and that vital role, for example, our larger and more progressive employers say, I want biosimilars on my formulary. That's the end of it. And their PBMs have to figure that out, or their plans have to figure that out. I know that often PBMs, if you want to carve a drug out or add a drug and they're not going to get the maximized benefit of discounts and rebates, the employer's paying for it in the end. So you've got to have the clout to be able to do that. And I know that it's a challenge for mid-sized employers, and we've got some recommendations for them. But I think they're going to have to get to a point with more and more biosimilars coming to the market that they're going to have to integrate them into the strategy. We're talking about doing things very differently. I'll share a little bit about that, where we're not giving PBMs and intermediaries the option to make those decisions. We're making them on our own. So I'll share that in a minute. But we need to learn from each other, peer-to-peer, employer to employer, what best practices are going on out there. And if an employer is not part of a coalition, I hope they have a pharmacy benefit consultant or someone advising them about what to do.
Can you describe the obstacles that payers have imposed that are preventing biosimilars from reaching employees of your member companies?
Sure. You know, when they came out, we thought they would be priced more competitively. We thought 20 to 40% maybe. They came out at 10 to 14%, or 15%, excuse me. And that was not what we had hoped for. And I think there was disappointment in the marketplace, and it was a mistake by the biosimilar manufacturers. We also know that some biologic originator drug manufacturers have kept adding patents to their drug to protect their originator and block biosimilars from entering the market. There's some lawsuits going on. It's going to all settle. Hopefully we'll all sing kumbaya and start, figuring things out. And then price negotiating with payers like PBMs that do rely heavily on rebates and discounts to get a drug on formulary. They may want the originator over the biosimilar because a lot of biosimilars don't pay rebates. And that's why they choose the originator drug. We know physician adoption has been slow because, as I said earlier, they're concerned about interchangeability, efficacy, safety. What if the carrier or the coverage doesn't cover the biosimilar, and then I'm putting the patient in a difficult situation? We know entry into the US market has been slow and very ineffective at lowering prices. We failed to overcome the discounts to the middlemen. So we need to look at the EU's, the European Union's example, where they've been using biosimilars for a long time. And they found and have shared that once a biosimilar was introduced into the market, they saw competition between the biologic and the biosimilar, which lowered the cost of the biologic across the board. So we do recognize that it's easy for a biologic to reduce their costs to that of or below the biosimilar, and that's just part of the risk of what's going on in the market. So we're hoping that competition really helps drive down costs.
And you kind of alluded to this before, but how about the role of pharmacy benefit managers and other middlemen in siphoning off the potential savings from biosimilars?
Yeah, again, because they're making a lot of money on rebates right now. And of course, we know that has to change, and it's going to change at some point. And if they don't get rebates or get less rebates from biosimilars, they don't want to include them on a formulary. Employers need to talk to their vendors and demand this. They need to have a collective voice. Employers need to be educated about these challenges. We think coalitions have been effective in doing that, but the message is not getting to every employer. And the PBMs and the intermediaries are not going to do this on their own. So education is key.
In a recent employer group webinar, it was described how Costco and Disney are working biosimilars into healthcare. What's significant about these efforts?
I think this is great. These are disruptors. We don't have Disney as a member, but we've got a bunch of other large nationally known companies like them. And although it's about time, first of all, I know Costco and a few of the other organizations out there like Walmart and others are willing to be disruptors. They're willing to try new and different things. And we're grateful for that. And we want to see more of that. And in fact, we are doing some of that ourselves. And I'll explain that in a minute, but in terms of integrating biosimilars into the plan design or the formulary, our members the big guys have gone to the PBM and said, we want these on formulary, add these drugs, and we need to watch and see. I think eventually PBMs will likely have a different tier, and they'll recognize that they're not going to maybe make as much money on that, or they'll figure out another way to, integrate a revenue stream, but they're going to have to change the offerings that they have in order to stay competitive in the marketplace as well.